Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And we're back. WHIP, Ethan Miller, Taylor Snyder, Sam Cohn with you today. In the studio, it's 11:19. We have Josh Rultenberg in the studio from the Channel 69 team serving Eastern PA and Western New Jersey. Joined that team in February 2018. Josh started his broadcast career as a sports director in Alabama. Josh covered Alabama and Auburn football along with high school sports. Josh has been in it all. He was at 3 different stations in New York and Alabama before coming to Channel 69. And what I know, you're excited to be back in PA. That's what I've been reading. That's what I know about you a little bit. You're excited to be back. How you doing? Welcome to the studio. Welcome to Temple. Welcome to the Tech Center. I mean, is this beautiful? I mean, this is... What else could you ask for?
It's right? Like I never left. First off, I want to thank you, Ethan, and you guys for having me on. Anytime I get a chance to come back to Temple, obviously it's very special because this is where I was created, so to speak, in terms of my career. And I've got a lot of great memories being here. And yeah, it's great to be back in Pennsylvania. It's a very hard road when you're on the road for 6-7 years, but to be back, it's very special.
So Bama was like a different world. How long were you in Alabama for?
I was in Alabama for 2.5 years, and you can imagine. I mean, a kid who grows up in the suburbs of Philadelphia to go to Alabama is like living on a different planet.
But it was probably a little cool, reporting for Alabama football games in Auburn. And
yeah, and I didn't really understand it at first. There were people when I got down there. Here's the first 3 questions you're asked, just to tell you how different the South is. First 3 questions you're asked are you married?
Oh, yeah?
Do you have kids? And Alabama or Auburn? That's the 3rd question you get asked.
My dad spent a couple years working in Alabama a number of years ago, and he always says the office he was in was with a bunch of people from the area, and people would ask him Alabama or Auburn. He'd say, I mean, I'm not from here. Like, I don't really care. And they would like shun him. They would hate him.
That's what I was getting to.
People do not take that lightly.
That's no joke.
No, you have to choose once you're there, and if you don't, like he just got done saying, if you're an Alabama fan, obviously you hate Auburn and vice versa. But if you don't like either, you're shunned, like he just got done saying.
Were you there for the Iron Bowl when you ran it back?
The kick six. Yeah.
Stop. You were there?
Yeah. So.
Oh my God.
So let me tell you.
I was thinking that. I was like,
so
wait,
let me,
that's one for the ages.
Let me give you.
that's the greatest game of all time.
Let me give you the time frame of when I was there. I got down there in the summer of 2011, and like I said, I covered Alabama, I covered Auburn, I also covered Florida State, and a small school, Troy University, which is a Division I program as well.
In the Sun Belt.
In the Sun Belt,
Yeah.
yes. DeMarcus Ware, Lawrence Tynes, you got some guys that have been there. I got down there in the summer. Cam Newton had just pulled off his undefeated season as Auburn beat Oregon. So that's one national championship. Then the first year I covered the sport, Alabama had beaten LSU in the national championship. They shut them out. After the greatest game that I've ever seen was a couple weeks prior between the two. They called it the Battle of the Century. It was 6-0 in Tuscaloosa. LSU won. It was 9-6, and it was like a funeral when LSU kicked the game-winning field goal. But what you come to realize about that game was there was 20 first-round picks and 40 NFL players on the field. So It was amazing how they couldn't get between the 20. So that's the first year. The second year, I go down to Miami, and Alabama torches Notre Dame in the national championship. So we have Auburn, 2 from Alabama, and then as I'm leaving, Auburn is playing Jameis Winston in Florida State in the national championship. So it was
You've seen it. I mean,
4 really good seasons.
Seen it all.
Awesome. That's great.
It was a time that I look back on.
You could put those games on your resume.
Yeah, it's been fun.
That
It's been
is
fun.
really, I see you did a little reporting on horse racing.
Yeah, that was in.
That's a little different.
Yeah, that's in Albany. That was my second job. The Saratoga Race Course actually is the oldest sporting venue in the United States.
Wow.
1864. And I didn't really understand the sport at first. But when you start to get into it, you see how much time and money gets put into this.
It's the tradition. With horse racing.
And I got to see American Pharoah lose.
Yeah, that's only one time, right?
One time.
I got a question. When you're covering horse racing, are you allowed to put money down?
Good question.
Yes. You are. I mean, I don't have a stake in the game.
Yeah.
I'm not.
But you're allowed.
I can't control the outcome. Sure.
That's surprising. I would have thought that any media is not.
Well, let's be real. Let's put it this way. Legally, yes, I'm allowed to.
Okay.
Ethically, it's
No.
probably not right to.
Yeah.
Do. So
yeah.
I never did that. So let me clear that up.
Okay. Okay.
But
You
but if I can go one day when I'm not working, I go
got
to
a
the
follow-up
track.
question.
Sure, good.
You ever see anybody famous at the race?
Sure. I met the most interesting man in the world.
Tom Brady?
No.
I'm
No. From the
I'm
from the
kidding.
Dos
I know,
Equis
I know,
commercial.
I know.
Bill Parcells
Cracking up.
owns,
That's a good one.
owns a horse up there.
Okay.
I saw Mark Wahlberg up there.
Wow.
A Boston guy, Mackey
yeah.
Mack.
Yeah, because Albany's not too far from Boston.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah.
up there. Trying to think. There's several people. I mean, Saratoga is a really small town outside of Albany, and in the 6-week stretch that the meet happens up there, you get celebrities to come in and out of there for sure.
That's extremely cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
and not to mention world-class trainers as well. If anybody knows anything about the sport, you get the top of the top guys who have won the Triple Crown.
For
They're
sure.
there with their horses.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, anyway, we're talking why college athletes should or shouldn't get paid. That's their topic today, and I want to know what you guys think about this because it's a serious topic right now. As the years move forward and we get close to 2020, there's a lot of conversation revolving around this topic. If athletes should get compensated for the work they're doing. Josh, start us off and let us know what you think. You played a college sport, correct?
Mhm.
And take us through your own experience and kind of put that together and give us what you think on it.
Sure. I'll talk about my experience first. I was a college tennis player. First, before going to Temple, I actually was at Rider University in Princeton, and I played on a college scholarship there. And then when I came to Temple, I kind of walked on the team.
Right.
So it was two different experiences. When you're a scholarship athlete, your time is very limited. It starts in the morning very early. You're waking up and you're having breakfast, and then immediately you're in the gym to work out, or you're running, or you're practicing.
Mm-hmm.
After that, you get to class. And when you're done class, it's back to doing practice or working out, or whatever you didn't do in the morning, you're doing the opposite. Because it was an individual sport, we didn't have as many meetings as you would say for team sports. But it was a lot because you had to do all that, and then eventually you had to find a way to be a student as well,
Right.
and then let alone if you want to have a life.
Yeah.
I feel more for the team sport people because I always remember trying to interact with athletes. And, if you're a football player, I covered Temple football here when I was here, and I covered one of their training camps. And I remember these guys waking up 5 o'clock in the morning maybe, and, they're in meetings, and the meetings are position meetings. They're side of the ball meetings, then it's the team meeting, and then it's go practice, and then it's review tape, and it's
go
the
to
gym,
class.
go to class, right, and try to do your homework. So I would say this. First off, you say start to get compensated. The one side of the coin is some people would say they're already being
Right.
compensated.
And I was going to get into that as well.
Because they're getting a full scholarship that a lot of these guys might not necessarily qualify for certain schools that they get into with their grades.
Most actually, but
I was trying to be
trying to be
honest nice.
Here. I mean,
But yeah, I mean, you got guys who maybe go to, like for instance, like you bring up the University of Alabama. It's a very prestigious educational school, and I don't know how many of those guys on the football team can read.
right.
To be very clear,
To be honest.
I mean, we've interviewed several guys who go on to bigger and better things, but a lot of the guys that are there that don't make the NFL, what are they doing with their life?
So that's the discussion. Why people think that these athletes should get compensated because they're putting all this time in.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. Yeah.
But my thing
Go ahead.
is that I agree with the point what you're saying that scholarships and all of that. The thing is that these guys, I'm friends with a lot of athletes at Temple through my time here, and what I see is that they're already getting, technically they're already getting paid because. One, they're getting a scholarship for over $30,000, and an education is a bigger value than anything in this world. As we could say, you get that piece of paper, you get the degree, you got a shot, right?
True.
So they're getting this, and they're already ahead of the kids who don't get scholarships because they're already dealing with loans. They're dealing with debt.
Mm-hmm.
They're dealing with all that kind of stuff right out of school. So half of their salary out of school is already going to their university if they're not lucky enough to have someone pay for their college. And Sam, what were you saying?
I think the biggest thing about whether or not you pay student athletes is that it's impossible to say you pay them or you don't.
Right.
Because first of all, as a prerequisite, if it's gonna happen, if you're gonna pay student athletes, it can't happen through this LeVar Ball league on the side that takes college athletes and says, "Come play for me because I'm gonna pay you," and then you can go to the league. If you're gonna pay college athletes, it has to come from the NCAA, and it.
Well, you think so?
I think it has to come.
And I
NCAA.
disagree with that.
I disagree as well because I'm thinking that the only way that these guys should get compensated ever is through television rights. It's through that.
And I've got a different way.
Okay, let me hear this.
Well, first off, I wanted to just be clear. Even though I explained the one side, I do believe that college athletes should be compensated beyond their scholarships.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
They get, correct me if I'm wrong.
They get a
stipend.
Yeah,
that for like $3,000, $4,000 every semester.
that pays for a Coke and a ramen noodles.
Does it though, or no? Seriously,
No,
they
you
get
get
a little
some-
extra money
you do
to
get
go
a-
out and
right.
and to go do things and.
A little bit, and it depends where you are. I mean, if you're going to get the same stipend for a kid that goes to Temple versus a kid that goes to UCLA and lives in California, how far do you think that dollar's going to stretch?
Right.
But what I was going to say was this: is that these kids, it is a full-time job, and
Absolutely.
the fact that it's a student athlete is wrong. Any kid that's on scholarship, if God forbid they wanted to go to their coach and they said, we want to take advantage of the education we're getting for free versus the sport that we've been brought here to play, you'd be laughed at.
Right.
That's number one. So you don't get to really take advantage of the education you're getting for free. So your degree that you go to school for
Because you're really focusing on
is
the
your sport. If you're a football player that's on a football scholarship, your major is football. Let's be clear about that. Number two, if you're an 18-year-old football player or you're an 18-year-old basketball player, and then also put them against just a regular 18-year-old student, and say, you're very smart for the average kid who, I don't know, is in computers or he's a lawyer or something. He can go get a job while in school and make fair market value for whatever an 18 or a 19-year-old can get on the street.
Right.
But you're telling me that just because this kid's abilities and his talents happen to be athletically related, that he can't get paid? How fair is that? You could theoretically be a student in college making $100,000 to go do some job, but because I play football or basketball, I can't go make money. How am I penalized for that?
So how do you compare someone? As you said, there are sports that are more individualized.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say somebody on the tennis team gets up, eats breakfast, goes to their workout, goes to class, goes to practice, and they don't have these 9 extra meetings.
Sure.
How do you compare their quote-unquote salary to someone on the football team?
And here's where I was going to make my point as to how these kids get paid. I don't know how realistic it is, but these kids are already getting marketed, whether they realize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So why not let them go out and get their own endorsement deals? If Nike wants to pay a college kid $100 million or $10 million, the schools don't have to pay. The NCAA doesn't have to pay. But all of a sudden, the kid's going out like a regular job and going and getting his fair market value. Okay, so why can't who do we want to? Who's the most? Let's point to Zion Williamson.
Yep.
Who gets more time on SportsCenter as a college kid than Zion Williamson? I mean, we know what he's eating for breakfast in the morning.
I in recent years, I have not seen an athlete get as much coverage as Zion Williamson.
Right.
And I honestly, I remember when he was still in high school, the hype behind that. And how old was he back then? 17, 16 years old. You were still seeing him on SportsCenter. Not that you don't see high school kids on SportsCenter, but the coverage was excessive.
Sure.
It was over the top.
It was very evidently LeBron James was the last person to get
Sure,
such hype out of high school.
and I think there was a study that came out a couple of years ago. I think either ESPN did it or somebody else, but they said if these kids were actually paid what they're actually worth in real life, I think they said the average football player, I think it was either Michigan or Alabama, that would have been the highest, and they would have been worth $500,000 each. And the biggest basketball program was Duke, and each of those kids would have been worth $1 million if they were paid fair market value.
Do you ever see this? This is clearly a huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you guys are bringing up great discussion, great topics, and this all makes sense. But my question is that do you think that universities that these athletes go to, do you think that they give back to the athletes once they graduate ever? That we don't hear about this, but do you think any of these guys are getting compensated once they graduate and once it's kind of legal? You know, that's what I'm trying to think. Is
I don't know if
really
maybe
don't
for
know.
a speaking engagement, or is that what you're talking about to come
Just
back?
in general, not even.
No,
Just,
I don't think so. I mean, I covered a university is a very politically driven system, and they have to really be careful about how they allocate their money. And any money that the school brings in theoretically would go back to the students that are already there to better the university. So I don't think so. But maybe it should. I don't know.
And honestly, the only problem, because here's the endorsement thing again, and people continue to talk about the endorsement thing, but the problem with that is that only, say like Nike are giving out endorsements to college athletes, right? There'll only be like 15.
Okay.
Right? Let's keep it like
But
that.
here's the point. Don't we live in a capitalistic society?
We do, but you got to think about it like this way. Then you got to deal with, I mean, with the world we're in now, right? You give Zion Williamson $50 million, right?
That's
You got,
some private company's prerogative.
how do you know, right, that he's not divvying it out to everybody on Duke, right? I mean, you got all these
that's
legal
up to
issues.
him.
That's up to him. But you got other issues about like, oh, why is he getting paid? Oh, why is RJ Barrett not getting paid? You know, and then you got all these issues and what's fair and what's not.
Look,
Why is
And
LeBron
nothing's fair in
James?
this world. I know.
Why is LeBron James making so much money and Luka Doncic not making as much?
Hey,
It comes down
if
to
you want fair, go to a carnival.
Yeah, hey, you know, you're right about that, and that's the problem, and that's the problem we're having right now. Just everything in life, but especially in the NCAA, they can't figure out anything, the way to compensate these kids, and it's honestly ridiculous because they're all struggling, and it's like.
Well, I
It's
think
a little hard to see. They got to find out. They got to figure out something.
that's why I stand by the endorsements, because there is.
What about the television rights?
Well, there's just no fair way to. For instance, if we keep talking about
it would
Duke
be
basketball,
fair though if it was television rights.
but to keep talking about Duke basketball, you have Zion Williamson who's on your team, right? Then you've got the guy who's waving the towel on the end of the bench. Clearly, those guys can't make the same amount of money, but they should each have the same opportunity to go out and make as much money as they want to make. So that's kind of where I sit with that.
I think an interesting thing to bring up, and it reminds me because I was playing this video game last night. Remember when they used to make NCAA sports games?
Yes.
And they stopped making them, well, for obvious reasons, but I read an article one time that said, you know, the whole reason behind it was because if you play as Texas A&M and you're number 2 on Texas A&M, anyone who watches just a little bit of college football will know that's Johnny Manziel.
Sure.
I want to get your perspective on that as far as like video games go and marketing. I mean, I saw like a kid the other day have a Patrick Mahomes Texas Tech jersey. You know, anyone can get a number 5 Texas Tech jersey, put Mahomes the 3rd on the back,
Sure.
but technically, you know, they don't sell those jerseys with names on the back. So from those two perspectives, what you kind of think about that?
I mean, I think the right decision was made legally when they shut that down, because you're already marketing off these kids enough. And whether universities want to recognize it or not, you know, just to keep going back to the same school I once covered, the University of Alabama, they're an athletic program that brings in $100 million a year. And for a kid to only get a scholarship that he doesn't get a chance to even take advantage of, I think it's wrong. So to bring in the video game thing, or if it's T-shirts or if it's shoes or whatever, they're already wearing jerseys or shoes. You know, for instance, what's Temple's Under Armour, right?
Right, yeah.
Right. So Under Armour's already getting a chance to market whoever's on the Temple basketball team, saying, "Hey, Temple guys wear Under Armour." So they're already getting away with that. These kids are already being marketed, and they're not getting fairly compensated for it. Where else in the entire world, in any line of business, would you see that?
And it's honestly sad because they're making billions of dollars.
Sure.
And it's like, I feel horrible for these guys.
I think
do you feel bad or no? Like
it depends.
Like, here's the thing: in 3, 4 years, 5 years down the line, right? They find some type of they find a something where they can compensate these athletes, and they can find an equation where it all works out. Blah blah blah. Do you feel bad for the guys that weren't getting compensated, and do you even feel bad for them now? It's my whole thing.
I'm a journalism major. I'm not a business major. I'm not a math major, so I can't tell you the answer. But what this equation is. But I think the biggest problem in terms of compensation is how do you do it fairly, and how do you compensate across the board by different schools, by different players,
Right.
by how much they play. And I do love that idea that you brought up, Josh, of endorsements, and if they can get paid to be endorsed. But that leaves out. But if a company, Nike, Under Armour, down to Puma, whoever they want to endorse, it leaves a huge variety of athletes because there's so many across the country that play collegiate Division I sport at such a high level and then don't go anywhere with it. So how do you? There's just too much variation in players and talent. And
we bring up. I brought up a big name like Nike. Obviously, there's no bigger name than that.
Mm-hmm.
But who's to stop? Joe Smith, who's on the swimming team. Why can't he go to some local pizzeria who wants to sponsor him?
Right.
I mean, it can be small
as that.
Right?
Yeah, it's small
that's
as
what
that.
I'm talking about. Obviously, not everybody's going to get the big name brand people, but only so many people even deserve that. So I just think if they have the opportunity to go out and market themselves because they're already being marketed, I think that's the only fair way. Because the NCAA, in my opinion, is never going to pay these kids. They're just not.
Really? You never think
I don't think so. No, and I think the talk has been that you'll have maybe the Power 5 conferences leave the NCAA and kind of do their own thing. Maybe that happens.
To be
would
fair,
be
the
horrible.
NCAA is one of the most corrupt businesses in the world.
But that would also ruin a lot of things. That would ruin the excitement, ruin the whole thing about college sports.
There's a lot that has to take place for that to happen. So we'll see what happens though.
Alrighty, well, we appreciate you for coming in and talking if athletes should get paid or not. It's a great discussion, and it continues to be a serious discussion. We'll see if athletes ever get compensated. You think no.
I don't think so.
I think maybe. Sam, Taylor, what do you guys think?
I just don't see it happening, especially from a legal standpoint. That's really what I look at. Everything's got to be legal. Everything's got to be done the right way. And I think if it does happen, we're eons away from it. I thought it would have happened if you had asked me in 2007 will it happen. I said, oh, maybe by 2018, 19 as a joke. But here we are, and we're still the farthest thing away. Right. I think there's way too much to figure out. And the point about Under Armour, I think that's a fantastic point because, such a profitable company that makes so much money. And the fact that they can just do that, it'd tick me off if I was a Division I basketball player at Temple University and I wore Under Armour and I wasn't getting paid. Look at Jordan Spieth. He gets paid millions to wear Under Armour. So
I played high school basketball and my warm-up had a Nike swoosh on and I didn't get paid. I'm just saying. But I would like to be optimistic and say that I think it can happen. But in the near future, I just don't think it's a feasible idea, a feasible change, because that is a huge, huge, huge undertaking for the NCAA or for universities across the country to take on.
It's 11:41 in the studio. This is the main event. WHIP, Ethan Miller, Taylor Snyder, Sam Cohn. We had Josh Rultenberg in the studio with us. We appreciate him. Temple alum, now broadcaster at Channel 69. Serving Eastern PA and Western New Jersey. Check him out. You can check him out on his Twitter, Josh Rolt News, or if you like Instagram, you like photos, you can follow him, Josh Rultenberg. Appreciate you for coming in. Really do. This was awesome. College athletes getting paid. It'll be a discussion for years, but we will see you on the other side. 11:42 in the studio. WHIP. We'll be back after these messages.